I am Miguel NER on New England Riders site. Ken Condon last year agreed to do these sessions with us as well as this year. I'm very grateful that he does. Ken is nationally known, if not internationally known, author, fine motorcycle rider, teacher, good dad, new grandpa, and all kinds of other stuff. What we're talking about tonight is reading the road. It's one of my favorite sessions. The reason that I like this session as much as I do is because it's one of those skills that once you realize what it is and you use it, it'll be a game changer in terms of predictability, in terms of coming into corners, in terms of reading what's ahead of you. And that's oftentimes people's biggest fear is the fear of the unknown and what's ahead. So being able to read a little bit better about what's ahead is what we're trying to share with you tonight. And with that introduction, I will leave you with Ken.
So yeah, reading the road. Mike and I were just talking about that. Mike's done street training with me in the past, and it was a big takeaway that I know he had, and I hear it all the time from other students of mine. Reason being that it's the sort of thing that if you can't read the road, you will eventually get yourself into trouble by going into a corner too fast. Now, once you learn the technique, you will still not get it right every time, but I do find that it's really, I pretty much can figure out what a corner is going to be like, and how to approach it, and what it's likely to do around past where I can see. I have to know how to see what I can't see. So that's what I hope to kind of help you with tonight. So that's sort of the opener here, that this is one of the most important topics. A lot of people will bring up things like, we got a lot of people show up for the slow speed maneuver talk, and understandably, people do that every day, and that's one of the hardest things to do on a motorcycle, but it's not going to kill you. Now, failing to read the road, that could kill you. So that's why this is just so important. So let's dive in. I just want to go right into my screen share. Reading the road. We're going to talk very specifically about when you're in an environment like this. Now, the photos that I'm going to show are static, so we have to understand that as we travel down the road, the corner reveals itself. So when we first look at this corner, for instance, we're going to talk about this one specifically a little later. We can see what we can see, but we have to be able to interpolate in our mind's eye what is around the corner. Now, we're not magicians, and we don't have X-ray vision, so we are making judgment, but it's educated choices. It's educated decisions that we're making. We're guesses about what's likely to be there and what are the consequences if something were there. So that's sort of just the intro. Let's start right from the beginning with what we talked about last week, which was cornering lines, and the importance of setting yourself up so that you get the best angle of view through the corner. So that's one of the main reasons why you would consider doing an outside, inside, outside cornering line on the street. It's primarily to get a better view around the corner, and that also helps you to read the road. Now, this was the series of corners, and this is real life, how we end up, the red bike and the blue bike end up negotiating these corners, this series of corners quite differently, one more successful than the other. And, the reason that this happens is that, there's assuming the knowledge is there, that the blue rider knows that he wants to be set up wide for every corner. So why didn't he? Well, the question would be that you could probably guess that he just wasn't able to see what he needed to see, and wasn't able to read the road. Essentially, he wasn't able to understand the language that the road is speaking, and so ended up making a bad choice. And so this is an example. The details here about people crash at the exit of turns. They don't crash at the beginning or the middle. It's at the exit, and even a little farther over. So, and it's because they realize that they're in trouble, back in this area. Well, they don't crash right there. It's where they're headed. That's the problem. So again, that's a recap from yesterday. This is also, or last week, this is also we addressed last week too. Now, this is pointing out apexes. I want to talk about apexes specifically today. And because it's part of what we're trying to do to piece together the information we need to get an idea of what we're in store for, and therefore how much we should slow and how much, we can, when we get on the gas and all that. So this is, a photo, again, it's static, and that shows you the apexes of each of these corners. And if you were here last time, last couple of times, I've probably brought this up, the apex is always around the corner. So if you apex back here, you're going to end up having to turn a second time to stay in your lane. Whereas if you hook around and you hit that apex pointed to the exit, because it's all about the exit. It's just whether you choose to go in tight to the apex or not. Or if you, because otherwise you're just riding up the middle of the road, and just fine, you can do that, but it's not utilizing the benefit of a cornering line, again, our topic from last week, where you set up wide and you come in tight and then you exit wide on a single corner. In this case here, you go outside, inside, you stay inside, and that becomes the outside of the next corner. But that's your line and that's your plan, that's your strategy. Now, to say that there's no apex is really not helpful, and I think, because it's part of this line. And because if you don't have an apex, even if you don't go tight, you start to move yourself toward the inside, that's your apex. It can be out in the middle of the lane, doesn't need to be at the very inside, but it's the innermost part of the turn. It's typically the slowest part of the turn also. So that's how I define apex. And this is what it looks like. And I'm looking that far down the road. I'm getting a big picture here. If I need to get my eyes back down, then they go far and then near and far and near as I sort of ratchet my eyes through the corner, through the series of corners. So that's, again, this is what the goal would be, is to get all these apexes just right. So if we were to look at from a bird's eye view of that photo we just saw, here's the first apex where an arrow would be. And then the next apex is right over here, because we're following the red rider's line. And that's where an arrow would be landing. And then the next arrow would be right around over here, right, a little bit closer right there. So that is what this looks like from above. And so this is what your plan is that then you connect the dots and you get yourself through there. So this one's actually rather easy because you can see through the corner, quite through all these corners here. It gets, maybe a little different up here. But this is, again, to just set up what the plan is, what the strategy is to get through this series of corners with the bike pointed safely at the middle of the turn, so that you're pointed safely toward the exit. Again, an example is that if you apex early, you're going to be pointed toward the oncoming lane. So you hook the bike around and have it head toward the middle of the lane, toward the exit, and then you hook around again and then rinse and repeat through the corners. So here's, again, this is a clip from a video, a screenshot. That's where the apex is. Well, I'm aiming for a part of the corner. I cannot see it. You're absolutely right. I do not see that apex, but I can, in my mind's eye, if you get good at this, I can get pretty good at knowing where the apex is, give or take. I'm not committing 100% to that apex, but I know that it's around the corner, but that apex is somewhere over here. I think we can all agree, if there's an apex, which we just talked about, that it's going to be around the corner, in this case, in this shot, this screenshot. So I'm going to want to stay wide, again, get a better look around the corner. I'm going to start to work my way toward the right portion of the lane. And that would be, whether it's along the white line or not, that's my apex. It's the part of the turn where it's generally the slowest part of the turn. And it's the part of the turn where I'm now pointing myself safely, not toward the oncoming lane on a right-hand turn, but down the road. And, in the middle of the lane was fine. So here's the apex. This is the same corner, and that's what it looks like as I come around the corner. And this is what I was talking about, how the corners reveal themselves. Now, again, when it's dynamic, you're looking, and as fast as you're going to then know whether it'll confirm that what you thought, where you thought the apex was correct, or whether you needed to maybe turn in a little later or a little earlier. Later is always the better option. And then then you go, okay, I got that. Or you can adjust it. You can always adjust. You don't do it abruptly. But if the road opens up a little earlier than you thought, you can trim it in a little sooner. Just straighten the corner out. So again, that's another way to describe it, like the cornering line idea, is that you're straightening the corner out. So to straighten a corner out means you have to have an apex. There is a point where it's the innermost part of the turn. So again, you're here, if you were listening to, like I say, Brett Tex was doing a podcast with one of the Yamaha champion school instructors, and they were talking about, yeah, apexes don't exist on the street, and I disagree. It could be semantics. Again, Brett sort of then talks about it as being a byproduct of a good line, and I 100% agree to that. And that the exit is your goal. The apex is not your goal. The apex is kind of a breadcrumb along the way to getting yourself pointed safely down the road. Okay. So that, again, this is almost just all a setup to have a strategy. What is the strategy? What is our goal here? Again, it's always to get yourself pointed safely down the road. It's all about safety. So this is what we typically see or fear when we think about a blind corner. And what do I do? Well, how fast? The idea is that if you don't know, and it's really got you stumped, then you have to go in slower. That's all there is to it. So this is actually a photo of me down in the Blue Ridge Parkway area, all loaded up for camping and everything. And, and going in there pretty good. What makes me think I can do that? Well, it's because I'm starting to work my way in away from the yellow line. Again, I was hanging out there quite a ways. I wasn't going to hang out there too long because I didn't want a car to come across around the corner. So I start working my way over, and then I'm going to hook around, and I'm going to think my apex is going to be somewhere over here. So as I'm orbiting around the corner, I get myself more or less pointed this way, and then I'll be pointed safely down the road. Now, how do I know that the apex is over here? It's the relationship of all these parallels. And again, if you think in terms of the bird's eye view, these are all parallel. These yellow lines and white lines and guardrails and edge of the road, they're all parallel. It's just, they're curved parallels. So we see in perspective, which means that as these two lines go away from us, they come to a point. We can't see the point here because it's blocked. This is a blind corner. If it's a straightaway, then it's right in front of us. It's like railroad tracks going down, in the Midwest. It eventually comes to a point on the horizon. Excuse me. So this is what we're trying to deal with, is this sort of situation. Like I say, it looks like I'm going through here pretty quick, and it's because I have a pretty good idea what's going on. Do I know if there's gravel in the road? That I don't know. That is, I'm taking a chance by going into a blind corner at speed. If it's at a speed that I couldn't handle, if there was something in the road like that, then I would be in trouble. So that's the one thing. We're not talking about that. We have to always keep that in mind. So don't think this isn't racetrack stuff where we know there's nothing on the road. We're out in the real world where we have no idea. So we have to keep that in mind. Again, the best strategy is to stay wide to get a better look around the corner to see that stuff early. And then you start working your way in. Now, as I come around the corner, if I start to see gravel here, I just plan on going around it. Now I'm going in there pretty good. That means I'm going to have to lean a little bit more, because as I was going to straighten the corner, I would have had me along the white line. I won't be able to do that if there's gravel there. So I have to go around the outside of it, which means that at this point here, now we start talking about trail braking, which we're going to talk about next week. But it almost can't talk about cornering without talking about trail braking. And this is something that the podcast that I was bringing up about Brett was about trail braking. And so that I do recommend that you listen to that podcast. I saw it's been popping up, on Facebook yesterday. And so when it comes to trail braking, as far as safety goes, I'm still on the brakes here. You can see my brake lights on. At this point, I'm not slowing anymore because I did all my slowing, back before the corner, but I'm not off the brakes yet because I'm not sure what's around the corner. So I'm probably like 8% brake, pressure, if that, maybe 5%. And I'm starting to release the brakes. I'd be probably fully off the brakes just around over here. But I'm not ready to because I don't know what's around the corner, and I'm not sure exactly 100% just what the radius of this corner is going to be. If it ends up hooking around tighter I want to be on the brakes because it'll help keep the bike tight. Now, it's not to slow down. I'm already at a speed that I'm happy with. Even if the road tightens, I'm at a speed that I'm okay with. Now, again, I can do it because I'm comfortable leaning a motorcycle. Beginners need to be extra cautious because you really don't know what your lean angle limit is. Everybody has one. So in this case here, I knew I could handle whatever's around the corner, even that I couldn't see. So I was able to maintain this type of lean angle, but I was not comfortable enough getting off the brakes yet because I'm carrying those brakes just to help the bike turn, but also to make sure that, if I had to like suddenly something appeared, I'm already on the brakes. All I have to do is squeeze them a little bit more. So I'm not off the brakes, committed to that speed. And then something happens and I have to get back on the brakes. That's when things get kind of sketchy where you're really upsetting the chassis and the tires. So, so that's the idea here, is that trail braking is part of this whole equation as far as how you execute a corner. And again, that's our whole topic next week. So I'll save a lot of that. Let's go. Yeah, okay. So here, let's break this corner down. Now my street students will probably maybe recognize this photo because I've been using it for quite a while. This is just down the road. It's a road that we ride right out here where I live. And we look at these things and I ask the question, well, what specific things can you see that are clues that'll help you get through, understand what you need to do as far as entry speed and location to execute the strategy of the outside, inside, outside path of travel, or let's just make it the strategy of making sure that you're always pointed safely at the exit. So then ask yourself, what are the different things that you would look for and then process? Again, you want to be able to see what you can't see. Like in this area here, I can't see here, but this isn't too difficult. This is actually why this is such a great photo, is that I literally cannot see anything here, but all this stuff here gives me good information to give me a pretty good idea about what the road's going to do. This is like cheating here because we get to see how it switches back. If this weren't there, then then we're not quite sure what's going, because it's dropping off and it could hook around on us. It could go out farther. So anyhow, this is actually a little easier to see, but we can't see this right here. So we don't see if there's gravel or anything like that. So we have to just keep that in mind. But I already gave away really what the primary things that you're looking for to help manage, get an idea of what the radius of a corner is, and that is the parallels. And it's how they converge visually in perspective. So you got the white line, the yellow line, the white line, the guardrail, that is a parallel. I love the guardrail, hate it for the idea of like it being roadside furniture that you can hit that would cause a lot of injury so don't do that. But it's great because it's the first thing that pops up. Like on a blind hill, I wouldn't see the road, but that guardrail will be the first thing that appears, and you can guarantee that guardrail is going to be parallel to the road. Now, sometimes it can read the wrong way, but that's another topic because this isn't foolproof. But here's our parallels. Like I said, the guardrail, the painted lines, and how they converge. So there's a few things. So here's what I want to point out here is you notice how the yellow line and the white line converge in this left lane right here. But the yellow line and the white line converge over here in the right lane. And that should tell you something. Visually, it's telling you that there is camber, positive camber and negative camber. So that's important information for reading the road, because this is going to give you better traction than if we were in Britain and we were riding on the left side of the road, and this would give us less traction. Gravity wants to slide us down the road, down the side of the road. Now, this is just in this photo, we have negative camber on left-hand corners, typically. Depends. I mean, if it's going to happen. Oftentimes those for left-hand turns, you have to keep that in mind. What's the problem is because you can run out of ground clearance. You will run out of ground clearance easier with a negative camber versus a positive camber. So this is a safer camber. It's a safer banking for traction and for direction control. It's easier because the front tire gets loaded here and it's easier to turn. When you're going this way, the front tire starts to drop off and it gets less load. So it's the bike doesn't want to turn as sort of authority than if you have positive camber. What else do we have? We have the guardrail we talked about. We have the road sign. Now this arrow's blocking it, but that's part of reading the road. So this is a 40-mile-per-hour road sign. That tells you something. And there's lots of people would say, well, that's just a suggestion and that's, whatever. It depends on where you're riding, whether that's actually a sign that is something you better heed, or whether it's very conservative, or, and it's kind of a gauge. So if I go to another part of the world or part of the country, and I know that Massachusetts, their 40-mile-per-hour speed limit it's probably not bad. I could probably typically do a 45-mile-per-hour run through here pretty safely. That would be probably could do 50. But there are other corners I know in other states where they might put that as a 30-mile-per-hour corner. As a matter of fact, I know this section of road, they lowered the speed limit to 30 here. So, but I can still get through here at 45 or even 50. But again, it's sort of the idea is that I know the area. When I go to another state, I pay attention to that stuff. Okay, when they mean 20-mile-per-hour corner, they mean 20-mile-per-hour corner. All right, so that is helping you read the road. If you go to to Europe, that's a whole other thing too. They're going to have different ideas of what what they need to tell you to make sure that you're safe. And the other thing that we hadn't talked about is, and this isn't a great photo for this, but is the trees and things that well above the road surface. So the guardrail is above the road surface, but when we talk about things that are really above the road surface, like the trees and say like the canopy of trees, oftentimes if you saw the sky in this photo, there would be an area where you got the idea that this was a tunnel. So the road cuts through the trees and you get an idea of that. And that's the big vision that is really helpful when you can start to just look at the big picture and you get an idea about, oh, I can see where the road's going before you ever see the road. So you're not seeing the road, you're seeing where the road's going. Again, that's sort of using your mind's eye to sort it out. And when I'm back here, I am looking off there because I want to have an idea. If I now think about that bird's eye view diagram that we did before, if I didn't know what was going to happen up here, it would affect what I do at the beginning of this series of corners. But as it is, I know that I have to apex around the corner, which is right about here where we can't see. So I'm going to stay wide to the yellow line. I'm going to move myself toward the white line. Whether you're on the white line or not, that doesn't matter. It's moving toward that area. This is the slowest part of the corner. And then you start to accelerate, but you're not going to cut over to the yellow line because then you'll be in the guardrail at your exit around the corner here. So you have to stay along the white line and then you hook around and your apex is somewhere around this yellow line. Now you might say, well, what about if there's a car coming around the corner? Then you don't cut in toward the yellow line. Your apex is not going to, it's going to be in the middle of the lane. So you stay wide, again, you get a good look around the corner. If there's a car, or if you aren't sure, you have to be really pretty much 100% sure that there's no car coming if you're going to cut in toward that yellow line, because you're leaning in toward the oncoming lane. So you keep your tires to the middle of the lane or even slightly to the right to stay away from that oncoming, the potential of an oncoming car. So that's really critical. I see too many people that, when they get into spirited riding, that they cut in too early because they, it feels, I'll tell you why they do it. Nervous riders cut in early. Nervous riders turn early. They're kind of, because the anxiety keeps you, I'm afraid I'm going to hit the guardrail. That's what you're afraid of. So you cut in early and then you've got other troubles. Now you're going to hit the guardrail at the exit, or you're going to get creamed by a car coming the other way. So looking at this whole thing, again, I'm talking strategy. Now, what do I do with this picture? Well, okay, I see the road's going this way. Well, what's the plan? Well, now I know that I'm going to do what we just talked about. Now, if you think about the camber here too, like in the rain, and it's really particularly slippery, this is more positive cambers down here by the white line than up at the yellow line, because this flattens out up here as it then transitions to the other side, that crown. So if I can put my tires in a little bit, not to sacrifice my apex or, to turn in too early, but I'm going to kind of aim for that up here, and making sure I'm not going to end up out here. So I will make sure that I'm down a little lower in like slipperier conditions. In normal conditions, I wouldn't really worry about it. I would just aim for the line that I'm visualizing. All right. So here's, I thought I had, yeah. Okay. So here's, excuse me, without ice riding today, and I breathed in a whole bunch of cold air. So this is excuse me, a student of mine, and we're up on Mount Greylock. And this is a very tight hairpin turn. Can't see it. And it's going uphill. And you can see he could see that there's no car coming. That he could see. So he stays out wide. But he ended up not quite turning in early enough. He waited just a little too long, and ended up going a little too close to the yellow line up at the exit up here. So the ideal would have been that he would have started to work his way away from that yellow line, away from that oncoming lane a little sooner, because you can see where he's pointed. The yellow line here is faded, so that's not going to help. And a lot of the roads that we have out here in Western Mass, we don't have painted lines. So we're now using the seam where they lay down the 2 lanes of pavement. The seam will kind of visually come and go. That's helpful, but we're using more of the edges of the road. But those angles are important. So if I go back, the other thing here that's going to tell you about whether the corner is going to be tight or whether it's going to start opening up are the angles and how these angle, not just the relationship of where they converge, but also the angle. So here, this angle here is pretty like perpendicular in front of us. So that's a pretty tight turn. If this angle were like this, then that means it's opening up to a straightaway. But when it's tight, when it comes across, that's closed. That's visually a closed gate or door. You have to keep your throttle closed. As you come around the corner, then those lines open up. So then the converging, when they converge close, you need to close your throttle. Okay, that's closed. And as it come around the corner, the yellow line and white line open up, because that's a straightaway, right? And then this is a curve, where they converge visually. When it goes a straightaway, you can open your throttle, but not before. So you have to be careful about your timing of your throttle. So as you come around, now because he's out a little farther than he wanted to be, he can't get on the gas right now. Now, in this case here, it's a pretty steep uphill. I would be trail braking, but probably not a whole lot in here because it was such a steep uphill. But this is a case where now you're using gravity to keep you slow. So you just don't get on the gas to maintain your slower speed that keep you tight. If you get on the gas, that's going to send you wide. Always remember, throttle equals opening a wider radius. So you have to be patient about that, when and how hard you get on the gas. And here's Janine. She's going down through this series of corners. And you can see, again, you can see all of this. This is no big deal, right? I got a strategy. I'm going to go along the yellow line. There's no car coming, so I can go all the way out here. I'm going to apex somewhere around here, again, just to kind of get myself pointed safely over here. That is the reason for the apex. The idea, the concept of an apex is that you're moving toward safety. All right. If you move this way, that's danger. Safety is over here. So you get yourself hooked around so that you're pointed to safety. So that is the number one takeaway about what you're wanting to do, what your goal is. Now, as she comes around here, she doesn't know what's going on over here, but you look at the angles here. See this at this point, she doesn't have to worry too much because they're perpendicular, but they're far away. And you can see that this is kind of looking like it's opening up. Now, it's not, you could argue that, and I won't know because this is again static. As you come around the corner, this could actually start hooking around, but it's starting to look like the angles are going to open this up a little bit to a straightaway. Not sure yet, but that's the idea. And so this is what you're processing, is you're looking at these parallels and you're making sort of educated guesses, what you're doing. Now look at how the camber is here. So this, because it's a little bit closer, the yellow and the white here than it is to here. So there is a camber change, but it's overall positive camber. So even the left lane, if you were riding in that, you'd still have a positive camber. So they banked this whole corner. So anyhow, these are things just to look at. And there's the chevron signs. Those are put up when at corners that are particularly maybe challenging and known to be a potential danger. So they'll put up those chevron signs. And see the fact that there's one right here. I'm actually trying to see now what it's, I can't quite tell. But because there's another one, actually might indicate that that is going to hook around. So that would blow my whole theory that this is going to open to a straightaway. If there's another chevron sign, she can see that better than I can back behind her. As I come into this place, I see another one. It's like, okay, I have to slow down more now. Again, the strategy is not only your line, but your entry speed. You have to be able to slow enough that you can then negotiate the turn and to get on the gas in the corner past the apex, at the apex, somewhere on the middle part of the turn, if you want to call it that, instead of the apex. You want to start to drive out of the corner. Now, if this were to hook around, I would be very cautious. I would be trail braking, and I would be on the brakes around into this part of the corner. Now, if this ended up coming out tighter, this would start to talk about double apexing, but let's not get too carried away here. But I'll finish the thought is that it would come in this way. I would go toward this apex here, and then I would go back out toward the yellow line and then come back in toward the white line. If that was a long sweeping turn, that would be a strategy. But again, these are all the things you think about when you look at this sort of static picture. The trees and everything else, they're, at this point, they're not all that helpful. We can see that the road's going this way. Once you come around here, this is going to start to show the things we were talking about before, the trees. There are telephone poles you can use, but they crisscross the road, at least in New England they do. So you can't always rely on those. Houses, like when there's houses are typically built parallel to the road. So if you see a roof line, that can give you an idea about how the road's going. Whether it goes to the left of that building or to the right, that's where you might not know yet. But you know that road is, that there's something there. The road's not going through that house. So it's going on one side or the other. So again, these are the things that you want to just be paying attention to. Okay, so this is the problem with not reading the road well. So this is our, we call it our blue rider from that bird's eye view diagram. And this is the problem when you don't look ahead and you don't plan or don't get an idea of what you're encountering. This corner was probably no big deal, right? The first corner is easy. The second corner is a problem. Third corner is a disaster. If he doesn't get this squared away, he'll be on the oncoming lane. Luckily, it's only a motorcycle in the other lane because he's headed there right now. He's on the brakes right now. Now, this isn't trail braking. This is panic braking. So trail brake, I can tell because of how he's pointed. If he's trail braking, the bike would be over here where he would want it to be, and then hook around and then pointed safely. This is safety. Point towards safety. This is danger. He's pointed toward danger. So the bike has to be out, bring it in, slow down again. So I slow for every corner. I'll trail brake in. I'll get off the brakes. I'll get on the gas slightly here, even between a corner that's this tight together. And then I get back on the brakes. And again, I'm just using the brakes and the throttle to help the bike dance through the corners. So this is sort of shows what he's doing instead of, I'll probably show this diagram again next week for trail braking, where he didn't slow down. Instead, this green is the go and the red is the slow. So he inversed this. This is actually a point where I would be accelerating over here, just slightly. Obviously, it's not a lot of gas, but the bike wants to be driven out of corners. But I would be slowing here. I'd be trail braking, and I'd be braking down here again. So this is the consequences of messing it up. All right, and it just gets worse and worse. And I showed you in that diagram where he would likely crash if he makes it through here and he doesn't get things squared away. He's going to hit this guardrail right here. You can see it coming. Yeah. So again, the red is the slow, and now transition to the go, and then the green is off you go because you've negotiated the turn. But I'm reading the road the same way. So I see where, I can see my banking is positive, right? I can see that it's actually not, it's narrowest right here. So that's where the road's the flattest, and then it kind of banks out for me. That's awesome. So I know I can finish the turn safely. These chevron signs, again, that's, you know what those are about. So we see those coming way before we are, you know, at this point in the corner. So for left-hand turns, this is like super easy as far as reading the road. It's right there in front of you. So what do you do with it? This is what you do with it. So you slow it down, brake, brake, brake. This is again a trail braking diagram. I'll be showing this next week. But again, you're looking at the relationship of these parallels. All right. So you can see that when they're parallel like this, the road, this is a straightaway, right? The corner's over with about right here. It's because you can tell that even here because basically it's just parallel in the angles. Now, obviously, if it's a corner that's hooking around on itself, they would also be parallel, but the angles would be different. So, all right, so that's all I have with that. Hoping we can get some questions on that. There's a lot more to it, because that's why the street training thing is so important that you do it. It's one thing to like know stuff, learn stuff this way, but you have to put it into practice. So I like to say that I haven't really gotten caught out on a corner in quite a long time, and it's because of this. Now, it doesn't mean I don't get caught out, but mostly I've ingrained this. I don't think about this anymore. And that's just takes a lot of years, but you have to start, and you have to start now, and you have to be conscious of it. Riding a motorcycle needs to be more than just, you know, what you've done all along. You have to improve, because we don't know what we don't know. We know that saying. And especially the longer you've been riding, the more susceptible or vulnerable you are to thinking that you don't really need to learn this sort of stuff. And this is where you have to double down and really sort of open your eyes and just see how you can be safer. Now, you might be terrific. I've ridden with a lot of people that don't really kind of see, they don't really use this strategy, but they have something that they use, and then it seems to work okay. Like they get through it, you know, but I feel like I've got a margin of safety. You know, I'll come in same speed as them, but I just have a better idea of what is likely around the corner. And I can tell that because their line isn't quite right. It's a little maybe optimistic, so they'll turn in a little sooner, and then they have to manage it, and they do. It's fine, you know. But again, it's degrees. I want to be as safe as I can be. I want to go through the corners at the speed I'd like to, and do it safely. That's the goal, you know. So I will also say another caveat is that I'm a visual person, and I was an artist. I went to art school, and that was my career for a long time. So I understand that, and that's something to pay attention to also. People that don't have real great depth perception are going to have bigger challenges, because I know there's lots of students of mine have mentioned that they have a problem with one eye. They have no depth perception. They don't have binocular vision. So you've got to pay attention and understand that. This is actually even more important for you to understand. Just pick up the clues that you can see and incorporate those into your judgment, your decision making. And again, it takes time, but it gets ingrained. I don't think about it. It's just that I gather the visual information, and I just kind of know what to do. You know, that's not helpful for people who are just learning, but that's how it gets. But it takes, you know, conscious just awareness, and tell yourself that look at the. And if you're on a street training with me, I'm in your ear, and I'm saying, look at the painted lines, look at how, you know, look at the guardrail, look at the tree line, look at the house, the roof of the house line, the roof line of the house. So I'm constantly just like badgering you basically to keep picking up every one of those clues, and then making decisions based on that. So if all the information says that, boy, this looks like it's going to tighten up, this corner is kind of tight, it's like you slow down. And then if it doesn't, if it's actually you slow down more than you needed to, get back on the gas. It's no big deal. There's no penalty for going into a corner a little too slow. Big penalty for going in too fast. So as you get to really pay attention to this, give yourself a report card too. You know, be conscious of the fact that, you know, you're utilizing these visual clues, and you're paying attention to them. And when you come around the corner and go, yeah, that was exactly how I thought it was going to be. Good. Make sure you make note of that. Equally important is that when you kind of get an idea of what you should do, or what the corner is likely to do, and you're wrong, pay attention to that and wonder and ask yourself, well, why did I get that wrong? So that would be how you would progress on this. So Looks like we might have some questions, Mike, huh?
Yeah, Ken, can you, two-part here. One is, the question is, can you comment on reading the road conditions versus focusing on your line? And the other part to that is that he says he's found that in his past rides get poor if he's looking down, worried about road condition too much and not up where he wants to go.
Yep. Well, the thing about the line and these go together. The line and the vision is that I look at the road, I look at all this stuff we've been talking about, and the line kind of just appears in my head. I have an idea of if this, then this, you know, if the road is doing this, then I know I want my bike to be here, you know, and it's usually compartmentalized in some ways. The entrance, I always want to be wide as I safely can to get a good look around the corner. Again, and I'm looking at the corner, obviously, because I decided I need to move to the left or to the right, whatever. And then the line is comes from what I have determined what the corner is likely to do. So the line and the vision, it's all related. You can't do the line without the visual part and the reading the road part. As far as looking up and down, that's critical. You really your vision has to be really dynamic. So you're taking in the big picture. You're bringing your eyes back to some degree to focus on a middle distance, and then close only when you need to get a closer look at, say, some road hazard. Now, if you're in an area where there's a lot of dust and a lot of dirt and stuff around, then you got to go slower, you know, because yeah, you're just going to be preoccupied with, you know, crappy road conditions. That's something you got to pay attention to. And that's something that, you know, once you are at a speed that you feel pretty comfortable handling whatever's around the corner that's seeming to make you anxious, then your vision will come up. When we're anxious, our vision comes down. That's just a human nature. We look at things that make us anxious. So in this case, when you're talking about you're fixating on road hazards, then your eyes are down. And that's actually rather dangerous. So you really do need to have your eyes be up, middle, close, up, middle, close, left, right, vision, your peripheral, everything's got to be, you know, activated. Okay. Another one, Mike?
There actually isn't so much of another question. Is somebody brought something up in a comment that is, you know, something I think a lot of us have done, especially those of us who use a GPS, which is being able to look at your GPS to help predict the road as well.
Yep.
And how well that can work for you in some instances too.
Yeah, I mean, I've cheated that way too, but I do call it cheating. You're not going to get good at what I'm talking about if you rely on the GPS. Now, it can be in conjunction. You can look at the road and go, oh, I bet you it does this, and look down at your GPS and go, yep, I was right. That's cool. And I've used it. I've definitely used it. But I make sure that students that I bring on street training, that I want their GPS off. And I don't want them to be using that as a crutch, because it's not going to help you to actually develop this skill. So
I think we're good till next week.
Good.
Next week we're doing trail breaking, correct?
Yes, trail breaking.
So trail breaking for next week, 6:30, same time, same bad station.
Yeah.
We'll have to remember that.
Yeah.
And well, thank you for coming, and we'll see you next week.
All right, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
You bet.